All right, Shalom. Before I get started, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone, who taught me this truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. All right, we'll get right into this thing here. Bear with me. All right, there we go. All right, so jumping right into this article here. This is from the newstarget.com. All right, and the headline here reads, NATO chief warns Europe must prepare for war against Russia. Okay, so I was thinking about the scripture in 2nd Ezra 14, where it says, and showed him the secrets of the times in the end. All right, and the end time prophecies no longer tarry. All right, so this is kind of like a follow-up on the lesson that I did going into the war, the war on all fronts, and the world was, how's it go? The world on, let me pull it back up. What was the title of it again? Salakia. War on all fronts in the world ahead 2026. All right, so I'm thinking about the fact that, you know, the prophets of Yahweh Shem Shai were made privy to these visions concerning the end times. All right, and I want to make that point. Okay, let's go to 2nd Ezra 14. All right, so, yeah, war's at the door. What can we tell you? All right, this is excuse me. Excuse me. This is 2nd Ezra 14 and verse 1. And it reads, it says, and it came to pass on the third day, I sat under an oak, and behold, there came a voice out of a bush over against me, and said, Esdras, Esdras. And I said, here I am, Lord, Lord, and I stood up upon my feet. It says, verse 3, then said he unto me, in the bush I did manifestly reveal myself unto Moses, and talk with him when my people served in Egypt. All right, so Moses was given access to heavy mysteries and secrets from the Lord. Okay, verse 4, and I sent him and led my people out of Egypt and brought him up to the mount of where I held him by me a long season. Verse 5, the point, it says, and told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times and the end. Okay, read it again. 2nd Ezra 14 and 5, and told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times and the end. All right, and the point I'm making is that, you know, our forefathers, you know, the prophets of old, all right, they were made privy of the end time prophecies. Moses saw the end. Okay, as I said, the end time prophecies no longer tarry. Okay, and told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times in the end, and commanded him, saying, verse 6, these words shalt thou declare, and these shalt thou hide. All right, so again, okay, Moses was given, you know, access to certain things, certain mystery secrets, all right, and some things that the Lord said that he would hide. All right, but the main thing that we highlighting here in the lesson is that we're at the end. Okay, this is Deuteronomy 32. Just to add on to that point of how Moses saw the end. Deuteronomy 32 in verse 40, it says, for I lift up my hand to heaven, and I say, I live forever. Verse 41, if I whet my glittering sword and my hand take on judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies and reward them that hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood. All right, so what is he talking about? This is talking about the ICBMs, man. All right, the nuclear missiles. And I will make my arrows drunk with blood. And he says something similar in Isaiah 34. Matter of fact, let me get it real quick. Let's just pull it up. He said he was gonna whet his glittering sword, right? Isaiah 34, which also deals with the end time destruction. All right. So this is Isaiah 34, and straight to the point. This is Isaiah 34 and verse Verse 5, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. All right, that's the ICBMs. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea. All right, the Edomites. Okay, Babylon. And upon the people of my curse to judgment. The sword of the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, and with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai have a sacrifice in Basra, a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. All right, so that sword and those arrows are ready, man. Okay, to make a great slaughter in the land of Idumea, which is America. All right, Babylon the Great. Okay, judgment is at the door. So let's finish that off again. All right, let's go back, Salakia. All right, bear with me. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 32 and 42. And it reads, it says, I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh. And that with the blood of the slain and of the captives from the beginning of revenges upon the enemy. Verse 43, rejoice, O you nations, with this people. All right? Because Israel was scattered amongst the nations. And when Yahushua comes back, he's coming to deliver the elect, all right, out of America, out of Babylon the Great, and wherever the elect may have been scattered to the four corners. Right? Deuteronomy 32 and 43, rejoice, O you nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants and will render vengeance to his adversaries and will be merciful unto his land and to his people. Verse 44, and Moses came and spake all the words of this song in the ears of the people, he and Hoshea the son of Nun, and Moses made an end of speaking all these words to all Israel. See that? Again, and just like these Christians don't understand that the audience is always the Israelites, all right, no matter what. But anyway, let me go back into the article here, and we'll play this video as well, right? Oh, one more point, Isaiah 9 and 5, it says, for every battle of the warriors with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning fuel and fire. Okay, burning and fuel of fire. All right, so what did Isaiah see? He saw the end time destruction, all right, which we're seeing manifest now, right? Let's go back. All right, so back in this article from News Target, NATO chief warns Europe must prepare for war against Russia. All right, let's read on here. It says the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte warned that Russia could attack NATO within 5 years, urging member states to urgently increase defense spending and weapons production to deter a potential conflict rivaling World War II in scale. Russia's war economy is producing staggering quantities of military hardware, 150 plus tanks, 550 plus infantry vehicles, 120 plus drones monthly, far exceeding NATO's current production capacity. While Europe struggles to meet defense spending targets. So essentially, as we're reading here about Europe, America as well is outmatched by Russia. Okay, I'm thinking about Ezekiel 38. Okay, how the Lord said he was going to put hooks into thy jaws. All right, so the Lord, pretty much blessed, God with that power, man, that far exceeds, this Western power structure, America, NATO, EU, the EU. Okay, so that's a sign right there that this place is going to be defeated. But I want to make this point too, right? Just dealing with the fact that they're outmatched. I saw this down here. Here we go. So check this out.
We are now is absolutely not enough. When you look what Russia is producing now in 3 months, it's what the whole of NATO is producing from Los Angeles up to Ankara in a full year. And then Russia is not bigger than the Netherlands and Belgium combined as an economy. The two of you together is the Russian economy. And they are producing in 3 months what the whole of NATO is producing in a year. And don't forget, when you compare Russian numbers, that what you can buy in Russia for the same money is, of course, much more.
Yeah, so I don't know if you caught what he said, but he said Russia is producing in 3 months on what NATO could produce in a year. All right, so they have the advantage, is the point, and they're not prepared for war. Okay, they're not ready, as we're going to get into as well, you know, dealing with America and China as well. But let's play this, right, just to add some more. All right, this came out 2 days ago. It says Trump warns of World War III as NATO says it is Russia's next target. All right, so let's listen into this, about 7 minutes. All right.
Leaders of your life. Let it be cut away.
If you've been following the Ukraine war, you have probably felt this. Everyone is talking about peace, but the war keeps getting bigger. The US says it has a plan. Zelensky says the people should decide. Trump says World War III is around the corner. And NATO says Europe needs to prepare for war. So what exactly is going on? Is the war coming to a halt, or is there going to be a new war? Well, here's what's happening right now. The United States has a proposal. A free economic zone in Ukraine's Donbass. That's what the US is pitching, a free economic zone in Ukraine's Donbass region. Now, what does that mean? Think of it as a buffer zone. Donbass is the eastern part of Ukraine. 80% of it is under Russian control. The US says Kiev should completely withdraw from it. Leave Donbass, give it up, turn it into a free economic zone. But who will control this zone? Well, the US proposal does not mention that. Now, all of this is part of the American peace plan. And it suits Russia because they have been eyeing Donbass since 2014. The Russians have been fighting in this region. And like I said, they now control most of it. Ukraine is fighting to regain control, but the US proposal is asking them to withdraw, to turn Donbass into some weird halfway house, not fully Ukrainian, not fully Russian, and definitely not the front line that it is today. That's what Donald Trump wants. And how has Zelensky responded? Well, no leader wants to be the person who gives away land. So, of course, Zelensky cannot agree to the proposal. At the same time, he cannot say no to Donald Trump. So he has floated a third alternative, a referendum over territory. The Ukrainian president wants the people of Ukraine to decide because any deal that cedes territory is political kryptonite. And a referendum kills two birds with one stone. It gives Zelensky political cover and it buys him time. But that's not what Washington wants. They want this wrapped up by Christmas. That's what Zelensky said, that the Trump administration wants a quote-unquote full understanding of the plan by Christmas. That's less than 2 weeks away.
President Trump,
Plus, Trump wants elections in Ukraine.
If there is a need for elections now, there must be a ceasefire at least during election process and during voting. And this is something that must be discussed. And honestly, we think here in Ukraine that America should speak to the Russian side about this.
So Zelensky says he's ready for elections, but first there must be a ceasefire. And amid all of this, Donald Trump is warning of World War III. That's right. The same US president who promised to end this war within 24 hours of taking office now says a world war is in the making.
I'd like to see the killings stop. 25,000 people died last month, soldiers, mostly soldiers, but some people also where bombs were dropped. But for the most part, 25,000 soldiers died last month. I would love to see it stop. Things like this end up in third world wars. And I told that the other day. I said, you know, everybody keeps playing games like this. You'll end up in a third world war. And we don't want to see that happen.
Trump's frustration is with everything, with Ukraine, with Europe, with the process, with the meetings, and with the fact that things are moving slowly. For every diplomatic breakthrough, two new disagreements appear. And he's not wrong about one thing. This war is killing thousands of people every month, and the front line barely moves, and it must end. But Trump's NATO allies say it will only become bigger. In fact, they've issued a very specific warning, the NATO. They say a war with Russia may be coming. That's what NATO's new chief, Mark Rutte, has said. He said Moscow is probing NATO's borders the way it probed Ukraine's borders in 2021.
We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could happen to allied countries too. That we had to shift to a wartime mindset.
Hey, that's the spirit, all right? These nations have to shift to a wartime mindset real quick, all right? Revelation 11 and 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, all right? World War III, and it's coming in hot, all right? Let me get that in Zephaniah as well. Zephaniah 3 and 8. All right. It's a shift of a wartime mindset in the earth. Okay. This is Isaiah 13 and verse 4. It says, the noise of a multitude of the mountains like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts, the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua of hosts, mustereth the host of the battle. All right, the Lord is gathering the troops. Okay, he's causing that shift in a wartime mindset. Okay, he's mustering the host for battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushua, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land, all right, which is going to be the ICBMs, all right, that's going to be shot from one end of the earth to the other, all right. Prophecy.
Next target. And we are already in harm's way. When I became NATO Secretary General last year, I warned that what is happening in Ukraine could happen to allied countries too. That we had to shift to a wartime mindset.
If Ukraine falls, Russia will test NATO next. So the alliance is suddenly discussing things that Europeans thought they'd left behind, things like drafts and conscription, ammunition shortages, and 5-year timelines for potential conflict.
We need to be ready. Because at the end of this first quarter of the 21st century, conflicts are no longer fought at arm's length. Conflict is at our door. Russia has brought war back to Europe. And we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured.
So why is this war escalating? Because while everyone wants peace, they don't want the same peace. The US wants closure before this becomes an election year liability. Europe wants a deal that stops Russian aggression. Ukraine wants justice and security guarantees. Russia wants territory it couldn't win on the battlefield. So everyone says peace, but the maps in their heads do not match. And it won't change anytime soon. So that's the real question tonight, perhaps. Are we watching a peace process begin or a new war take shape? As they say, only time will tell.
I was born into revolution. I inherited power like a crown. What I delivered was isolation. I built a personality cult that touched every home. Millions suffered hunger under my rule, but no one dared to speak. I ruled from palaces. My people queued for rice. I called myself the dear leader. History calls me something else, the dictator. Who am I?
All right. Anyway, so let's deal with the again, like I said, I was just laying back in off the lesson that I did going into war on all fronts, the world ahead, 2026. All right. So now we're dealing with the conflict between NATO and Russia and all of that. Now, I was looking at this too, dealing with China and America. All right. War on all fronts is happening. Okay. This is from collapse.news. It says New York Times warns America is unprepared for war with China despite $901 billion defense budget. All right. And we'll get into that in a minute, but listen to what this guy said. This is the ambassador for China. All right. Victor Gale threatened U.S. with a very serious warning, right? Listen to that real fast.
If you want to have war, you will get war. If you want to destroy China, you will be destroyed. If you want to impose nuclear war on China, you will be wiped out by nuclear war. This is very serious. China's policy is very clear. China will not fire the first shot, but China will not allow you to fire the second shot. If you have not watched the Victory Day parade in Beijing on September the 3rd, one of the weapons China demonstrated, we call it 61, because it can contain 60 nuclear warheads plus one hydrogen bomb. Now, in the world of today, let me tell you, which country has hydrogen bomb? China is the only country with hydrogen bomb. And that ICBM can cover every corner of the world in less than 20 minutes and destroy any target in any corner of the world without any possibility of being intercepted.
Man, so you see what the hell is going on here? Man, it's not a game out here. Right? Let me add on to what he said. Thinking about 2nd Ezra 16. Let me get that real fast. Again, the missiles that's going to be shot from one end of heaven to the other. Right? 2nd Ezra 16. Let's add on to that. Excuse me. All right, 2nd Ezra 16 and verse 13. And it reads, it says, "For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp." All right, we read about the arrows also in Deuteronomy 32 and verse 42. He said, "I will make them drunk." They'll be drunken through the arrows, the blood, the destruction. All right. For his arrows that he shooteth are sharp and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. So this is what that Moabite dude was saying. Okay, they can be shot, anywhere and they won't be stopped. Okay, deadly close to this thing, man. All right. Anyway, let's go back to the read here. Not to be all over the place, right? But it said, again, the headline here from the collapse.news, New York Times warns America is unprepared for war with China despite $901 billion defense budget. All right. It says the points here. It says a classified Pentagon report warns the U.S. military would likely lose a war with China. China is rapidly building its military with a reported focus on seizing Taiwan by 2027. America's outdated forces rely too much on vulnerable, expensive weapons like aircraft carriers. The defense industry is too slow, requiring investment in nimble technologies like drones. Preventing war requires urgent military reform and smarter spending to rebuild deterrence. Right. So again, just like NATO, the same as with America, man. They're outmatched. They're outpaced, man. All right. Both China and Russia have the advantage. And it's set up that way for the sake of prophecy, because what? Babylon is going to be destroyed. Okay, these nations are going to come together as a force to take down this empire. You know, we'll read a little bit. It says a sobering video from the New York Times editorial board delivered a serious warning this week. America is not ready for a future war with China. Citing a classified Pentagon assessment known as the Overwatch Brief, the board argued that the U.S. military dominance is a facade. Yeah, I'm gonna look this word up. What does that word facade mean? Hold on. Bear with me. It's a facade. Let me copy and paste it. Hold on 1 second. I just want to look up this word, a facade, if I'm pronouncing that right. All right, bear with me. Definition. It says a facade, the face of a building, especially the front, a deceptive outward appearance. All right. Yeah, so they don't really have the power like they claim they have, you know. It's all the front. Okay. Going back. It says again, a classified Pentagon assessment known as the Overwatch Brief, quote unquote. The board argued that the U.S. military dominance is a facade, and the nation must urgently transform its defenses to prevent or win a catastrophic conflict. All right, but nobody wins in that catastrophic conflict outside of the elect. You know, this call comes just as Congress passes a $901 billion Defense Authorization Act, highlighting a critical disconnect between massive spending and battlefield readiness. All right, and we're not going to read all of that. Changing battlefield, the scale of the Chinese threat. Yeah, let's read a little bit of that, and then we'll grab more scriptures here. Or a matter of fact, I got a video I want to go into after this. All right, but it says the scale of the Chinese threat, the urgency is compounded by China's comprehensive mobilization, a 728-page report from the bipartisan U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission details how China is preparing its entire population for potential conflict. Check that out. All right. It says how China is preparing its entire population for potential conflict. Is that happening here? You know, it says the Chinese military is undergoing the fastest buildup since World War II, rapidly advancing its nuclear stockpiles, amphibious ships, stealth fighters, and drones specifically for a Taiwan scenario. All right, because they're going to take Taiwan from America. All right, it says, let's see if there's anything else we want to take from it. Yeah, we'll read these last two and we'll move on. It says Randall Shriver, the commission's vice chairman, warned that the U.S. is losing warning time. Right? Time is running out. Pointing to observations by military commanders that PLA activities around Taiwan now look, quote, not so much like exercising as it does rehearsal. China's domestic propaganda is also shifting, potentially preparing its people for the possibility of war, even as its international messaging downplays invasion threats. The commission reports cast a challenge in clear terms, warning that a China-dominated world order would be less stable, less secure, less prosperous, and less free. Right? It states that countering China's aggression is now a, quote, truly global challenge as Beijing deepens ties with other adversarial states like Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Exactly. This is what I said. All these nations are coming together to come against Babylon, right? That's what Jeremiah, let me pull that up. All right. It talked about prepare the ambushes, right? Let me get that. Prepare ambushes. Right? Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, Jeremiah 51:12. Let's pull that up. Jeremiah 51 and 12. All right. So this is Jeremiah 51 and 12. We'll read down. We'll read at we will read at verse 9. Jeremiah 51:9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go up everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. It's over, man. Okay, if you can't see it, then hey, the Lord didn't want you to see it. Verse 10. The Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, have brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, our power. Verse 11. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, have raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. All right, going back to Russia. For his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, the vengeance of his temple. All right, going back to his people, the Israelites. Okay, this is why these things are happening. Okay, the Lord is getting ready to avenge his people. Verse 12, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, make the watch strong, set up the watchmen, prepare the ambushes. Right? You know, we always make the joke that this bitch is about to get jumped. All right, stomped out. Okay, and that's what these nations are preparing to do. Prepare the ambushes, for the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, have both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. So, hey, this is the Lord's doing. Okay, right? Let me read that in the NLT, see what it says real quick. Jeremiah 51 and 12. It says, raise the battle flag against Babylon, reinforce the guard and station the watchman, prepare an ambush, for the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, will fulfill all his plans against Babylon. Ooh, man. And we're seeing it, you know, begin to play out, man. Okay. Right. That's why we're going into what? And it showed him the secrets of the times in the end. Okay. We're declaring unto you the end. All right. And that's it right there. So yeah, let's go to the next point here. All right. And we'll wrap this thing up shortly. Okay. Here's another point. This is from foxnews.com. It says U.S. could burn through key missiles in a week if war with China erupts, top security expert warns. It says defense expert says China's military buildup exposes how far behind America's industrial base remains. Exactly. They're not prepared. They can't keep up. They're outpaced. They're outmatched, man. Through the spirit, it wasn't set up to go in their favor. All right. Prophecy declares Babylon to be destroyed.
Are you losing sleep over your online reputation? Negative search.
I mean, there are a couple of things that I think are notable about this period. One is that China has an economy that is, including purchasing power parity, is roughly the size of the United States. Its economy overall not as large, but it has a massive economy that is involved in global trade in ways that the Soviet Union was not. And in addition, I think what we're seeing now is a China that is increasingly involved in building weapon systems that puts it on a wartime footing. All the major domains of warfare. I'm worried about a few. One is definitely worried about the inability of the United States to fight a protracted war. And you know, what does that mean in practice? It means that it's one thing to have enough munitions. And when it comes to munitions, I mean, the big challenge with the Chinese is that the People's Liberation Army rocket force which is their missile, which is the part of their military that has a lot of their missile capacity. They've got and they've built an increasing number of short, medium, and long range missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonics, as well as drones. And they have the capability to shoot those across the first and increasingly the second island chains. So the challenge for the U.S. is that it's going to need medium and long range munitions. It's an area that the Chinese are weak. People talk a lot about the drones, and we think on the air side. So at the war in Ukraine, the drones that are being used along the front lines. Well, in the Pacific, a big component is likely to also be undersea. And again, it's an area where, unlike, say, the Russians, when it comes to anti-submarine warfare, the Chinese, they're getting better, but they still can't see that well undersea. So if they're trying to bring soldiers on ships or even aircraft, but let's say ships across Taiwan Strait and land them, or set up a blockade around Taiwan, and you've got a large number of unmanned underwater vehicles, or UUVs. I think there are a couple of things that are helpful, including the terminology that's now being used. The secretaries refer to this time period as one where the U.S. and its industrial base needs to be on a wartime footing. That is, in my view, exactly the right wording. And when you look at the Chinese and the Russian industrial bases right now, they are both on a wartime footing. The Chinese are producing weapons systems to deter the U.S. in and around key areas like the Taiwan Straits and the South China Sea, or we've seen even recently around Japan. And if deterrence fails to fight and win a war, and the Russians are obviously in the middle of a war, so that terminology is helpful. There's been a major effort at the Deputy Secretary of War level.
There you go. All right. Let's grab this. All right, this is Habakkuk. Salakia. Yep, let me go back. Habakkuk 2 and 3, it says, For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. All right. So again, as I said, the visions of the end time destruction no longer tarry. All right. As we heard in the video, all right, the war again is at the door, man. All right. So this is the world ahead, man. War on all fronts. It's going down, man. So we'll leave it like that. Just, quick report. All right, let you know how these things are intensifying, why everybody's being distracted with the holidays and all the bullshit and the Diddy trial and Epstein and all the madness, the bread and circus. All right, this is what's really this is the buildup of what's happening, the things that matter. All right, the end. Shalom.